let's start with the obvious. Yes, there's a humming sound in the background. Yes, that is a fan because it's hot as balls here. And if that's too much for you, some of you prima donnas to handle, just tune out. I don't need to hear or get an email saying, what was that weird humming in the background? Or do you know there's some feedback in the background? Or, you know, I got sand in my shorts and I'm going to cry like a little girl. Keep it to yourself. You're here to learn, not to criticize. I will say it is refreshing to finally have some more bleeding heart left liberals reaching out, thinking it's their job to tell me how to do my podcast. I'd like you to, if you ever see me on the street and know who I am, I'd like you to come up and shake my hand and introduce yourself, because I got something for you. You're probably not going to get that hand back, first of all, and you're definitely going to be limping or carried away. Look, if you don't like the way I do the podcast, and listen, there has been a couple of emails again. I don't know how these bleeding heart liberals are getting through my filters. I have it set for non-pansy, and they're still getting through. However you're getting through my filters. If you don't like the podcast, don't frickin' listen. What the hell is wrong with some of you people? You troll the internet looking to bash on people. We have a loyal following that likes what we do, that's learning from this. So, like I said, for all the pansy, far left haters out there, just go away. Let's just say that. I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you to somehow get your testicles back and be a man again one day. But for now, just go drink your fizzy little drinks with an umbrella and play on the beach and you know, go buy a teddy bear or some shit. I don't know. Those of you that are still going to stay and listen to the podcast in the manner it's meant to be heard, laugh at the sarcasm and learn something, God bless you. Stick around. We're finally going to talk about your Pew Pews today. As always, like, subscribe, hit a button. If you don't, I'm going to come and piss in your Wheaties. This might be a two-parter. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to get started on it. It's a long one. We're not getting into tactics. I'm shocked to learn how little some of you actually know about ballistics, and it's something you need to know if you want to learn how to shoot properly and how to properly respect your weapon, how to act properly on a range, not look like an idiot on the range, be that guy standing down at the end of the line saying, I don't know why I hit it the last time I was here. You people suck to do that, by the way, because you don't know ballistics. So take some time to learn about ballistics, maybe in 2 lessons. Like I said, I haven't decided yet. This is a long one. We are going to get into ballistics, why the bullets do the things they do, why barrel length matters in some cases, why it doesn't matter in other cases. I dusted off a paper I did in college a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, like 4 years, 5, whenever I was going to college, to prove an instructor wrong from as many angles as humanly possible without directly calling them out. I have since changed a few of the key points as my mind has been changed, and facts, simply facts, have proven some of my thought processes wrong as well. I'll never admit that to the instructor, but you know, I've been proven wrong, and I accept that, and I've learned from the data. I mean, you can't fight facts. So this episode is one of those colossal arguments that takes place at gun ranges or in gun shops at least once every other week. It is a complete waste of time, as there is no wrong answers or opinions unless empirical data is stated incorrectly. Let's face it, there is no such thing as a prepper that gathers weapon ballistics through scientific method. And if you say you do, you're a liar. We don't compare results, and we don't come up with actual, true, and accurate databases. But if we learn something that works, we stick to it. Of course, we all claim that we figured it out first and we're the god of ballistics, but, you know, that's just part of being a prepper. We all skew the data slightly to argue our points when it comes to our weapon of choice. The paper I wrote was created because the instructor was giving a very long lecture on gun control and how only rednecks and serial killers have AR-15s. It was then followed by, a gun is a gun, they are all the same. My brain immediately exploded, the needle went to red, and a little voice inside my head said, this is your opportunity to take this instructor down. So, I present to you the paper that got me, as the instructor actually wrote on the paper, a reluctant 92%. For those of you that don't know, that's a hard A, baby. Suck on a college instructor. I didn't include her name, as I may have her for more classes down the road. I am not an idiot. So, if you're still wondering what this is about, the modern dilemma, the full-sized AR-15 versus a carbine. Few inventions have managed to generate as much enthusiasm, customization, debate, and unsolicited advice as the AR-15 platform. Described by enthusiasts as the pinnacle of modern engineering and by critics as evidence that humanity occasionally has way too much free time, the AR-15 occupies a unique position in modern firearms culture. It's often referred to as a Lego set for adults. It has enabled generations of owners to spend thousands of dollars replacing perfectly functional parts with slightly different perfectly functional parts. Yeah, you're laughing at that because that's the truth. At the heart of this enduring obsession lies a seemingly straightforward question. Should one choose a full-size rifle featuring a 20-inch barrel and rifle-length gas system, or a shorter carbine configuration with more compact barrel and abbreviated gas mechanics? What appears to be a simple matter of preference has instead evolved into decades-long conflict fought across gun counters, shooting ranges, internet forums, and comment sections where no one has ever changed their mind about anything ever. This episode examines the technical ballistics, mechanical ergonomics, and sociological difference between these competing configurations. By evaluating velocity, terminal performance, gas dynamics, component longevity, handling characteristics, and the remarkable tribal behavior exhibited by firearm enthusiasts, it becomes clear that neither platform is objectively superior. As deeply disappointing as this conclusion may be to people who have entered the discussion already convinced they were right, both designs represent highly effective engineering compromises optimized for different circumstances. So what we're going to be talking about is ballistics, the gas operation, which I'm going to tell you, I know some of you don't have a freaking clue what I'm talking about when I say gas operation and how the gas tube works, and you know how the bolt carrier accepts the gas from the gas tube and yada, yada, yada. So we're going to be going through this. We're going to be breaking it down a little bit. And if you want more information, as always, email me. When I get time, I will email you back. For the record, I did just check, and that fan is not too loud. You can suck it if it's bothering you. We're going to hit the first introduction. Well, we're going to hit the introduction first. Introduction and historical context, the birth of the black rifle. To understand why otherwise reasonable adults have spent decades passionately arguing over a difference of several inches in barrel length, one must first understand the origins of the AR-15 itself. Oh, for frick's sake, I'll turn... Okay, there, I turned the fan off because I know one of you's crying in your Wheaties right now about the buzzing sound in the background. Back to what I was saying. To understand why otherwise reasonable adults have spent decades passionately arguing over a difference of several inches in barrel length, one must first understand the origins of the AR-15 itself. Yes, I repeated myself. During the late 1950s, military rifle design followed a fairly predictable philosophy. If a rifle wasn't heavy enough to qualify as exercise equipment, and it didn't produce enough recoil to rearrange a soldier's shoulder anatomy, it probably wasn't considered serious. Large caliber battle rifles dominated military thinking, and many armed forces remained firmly convinced that heavier was always better. Into this environment stepped Eugene Stoner, an aerospace engineer who apparently looked at existing infantry rifles and concluded that carrying a steel telephone pole through the jungle might not represent the pinnacle of modern combat efficiency. Working for Armalite, a division of Fairchild Engine and Airplane Cooperation, Stoner proposed a radically different approach. Instead of building rifles from traditional steel and wood, he embraced lightweight aluminum alloys, synthetic materials, and smaller high-velocity cartridges rather than relying on sheer projectile mass. His design leveraged speed, efficiency, and modern manufacturing techniques. And by the way, if you want them, I do have the footnotes, and I do cite my sources. I have all of that if you want it. I'm not going to bore you reading it to you at the end of this, but if you want that information, I have it. It's at the bottom of this paper, so we can go over it anytime you want. Naturally, the idea of, the AR-15, I should say, naturally the idea was considered either revolutionary genius or complete madness, depending on who was evaluating it. The resulting AR-15 engineered around a 20-inch barrel. Contrary to popular internet folklore, this dimension was not selected by a spinning wheel or consulting a mystical chart hidden inside a government filing cabinet. The length was carefully chosen to maximize the efficiency of contemporary propellants and allow the cartridge to achieve its intended velocity. In practical terms, 20 inches provided sufficient distance for expanding gases to accelerate the projectile efficiently before it exited the muzzle. The result was impressive velocity, excellent ballistic performance, and the kind of engineering harmony that makes mechanically minded people smile in ways that concern their families. When adopted by the United States Army during the Vietnam War, the rifle offered several advantages over traditional battle rifles. Soldiers could carry more ammunition, move more efficiently, and avoid lugging around a weapon that felt as tough as it had been designed by someone with a personal vendetta against infantrymen. The full-size rifle performed exceptionally well in open terrain and jungle environments. Its long sight radius, smooth recoil characteristics, and impressive velocity made it an effective platform for the battlefield realities of the era. Now, I'm again very tired, bear with me, but this is good stuff to know, all right? So, yes, I wrote the paper. Yes, it's an old paper. Yes, I've read through it before I'm doing this, but I'm still tongue-tied, I'm still tired, and I'm not drinking coffee because I want to go to sleep when I'm done. So we finished with impressive velocity made an effective platform for the battlefield realities of the era. The warfare inconveniently evolved. As military operations increasingly shifted towards urban environments, mechanized transport, and close quarters engagements, troops discovered that rifle approaching 40 inches in overall length occasionally behaves less like a modern fighting tool and more like a medieval pole arm equipment type of thing. You know, those long poles they stab with, but you know what I mean. Navigating narrow hallways became awkward. Entering and exiting vehicles become cumbersome. Meanwhile, inside helicopters became an exercise in spatial geometry. Soldiers found themselves carrying an excellent rifle that was sometimes determined to occupy every available square inch of space simultaneously. The military's response was predictable: make it shorter. This simple request launched decades of experimentation involving increasingly compact variants of Stoner's original design. Engineers shortened barrels, adjusted gas systems, and generally spent years attempting to determine exactly how much rifle could be removed before the rifle itself ejected. The process produced numerous intermediate designs, including the XM117, no, that's wrong, XM177 Commando, whose abbreviated dimensions represented an enthusiastic exploration of the phrase, how short can we make this before physics starts filing complaints? Eventually, these efforts culminated in the M4 Carbine, formerly adopted during the 1990s, featuring a 14.5-inch barrel and significantly reduced overall length. The M4 offered dramatically improved maneuverability while retaining much of the original platform's effectiveness. Civilian shooters encountered a different complication entirely. The National Firearms Act of 1934 established minimum barrel lengths ensuring that anyone wishing to own a shorter rifle would first need to navigate paperwork, taxation, waiting periods, and enough bureaucracy to remind citizens that government agencies remain committed to job security. As a result, the commercial market largely standardized around the 16-inch carbine. It was short enough to handle well, long enough to satisfy legal requirements, and convenient enough to become a dominant civilian configuration. The development created the modern dilemma. Shooters now face a choice between the elegant, ballistically optimized 20-inch rifle that reflected Stoner's original version and the compact, highly maneuverable carbine that better accommodates contemporary environments. The debate has continued ever since. Entire internet communities have been built around discussing it. Friendships have survived it, or not. Some probably haven't. countless articles, videos, and forum threads have attempted to settle the matter permanently, usually by presenting arguments that convinced only the people who already agreed. The central reality, however, remains unchanged. Both platforms exist because both solve legitimate problems. The difficulty lies determining which problems matters the most to the individual behind the trigger. Comprehensive ballistic performance analysis. If there is one topic guaranteed to transform a calm discussion about the AR-15 into 47 comment arguments populated by charged screenshots and increasingly aggressive use of the capital letters, it is muzzle velocity. The obsession is not entirely misplaced. When comparing full-size rifle to a carbine, barrel length directly affects the speed at which a projectile leaves the muzzle. Since the 5.56 cartridge was designed around velocity rather than brute force, this difference matters significantly. Unlike larger calibers that often rely on projectile mass to accomplish their objectives, the 5.56 prefers to solve problems through speed, enthusiasm, and occasionally alarming amounts of kinetic energy. All right, this is where we're going to start to get into the scientific shit. You might want to take notes, you might not. I don't give a shit, but pay attention. When a cartridge is fired, propellant rapidly burns and generates expanding gases behind the bullet. These gases push the projectile down the barrel, accelerating it for as long as it remains enclosed within the steel tube. Yes, I know I called it a bullet, but don't forget this was written for a college professor that already had trouble with the terminology. I kept it as simple as possible. Of course, I should have said round, and I did not deal with it. This arrangement works wonderfully right up until someone decides to remove several inches of the barrel. Every inch removed from a 5.56 platform effectively shortens the amount of runway available for acceleration. The bullet exits sooner, leaving some of the propellant essentially leaving some of the propellant's potential energy behind. Physics, being notoriously unsympathetic to personal preferences, refuses to provide refunds. As a general rule, every inch the barrel removed costs approximately 25 to 50 feet per second of muzzle velocity. While that figure sounds insignificant when casually mentioned in conversation, the cumulative effect becomes substantial. A traditional 20-inch rifle launches a standard 55-grain M193 projectile, that's the green tips, 3,200 feet per second. A 16-inch carbine reduces that velocity to approximately 2,900 feet per second. A 14.5-inch, my creature of choice, carbine generally falls somewhere between 2,800 and 2,850 feet per second. On paper, the difference appears modest. After all, the numbers remain large, and large numbers have a way of looking reassuring. Unfortunately, bullets are not evaluated by accountants. The practical consequences become more apparent as distance increases and velocity gradually declines. Now, take a minute out. Let's look at this realistically. Yes, that 3,200 feet per second, huge. It's huge. That sucker is moving downrange. And yes, it is going to be accurate out to 800 meters. That's what it was designed for. I think 840 meters is the number we're looking at. Here's the deal. If you're over 45, let's go even higher. If you're over 50, 55, bro, you can't see 840 meters. You probably can't see over 500 meters, very well. Even with the scope, you're not going to be able to really see that far. So just drop this 20-inch argument right off the top, all right? Most of the time in civilian or prepper lifestyle, we're going to be using a weapon like that in home defense or close quarters combat. No bullshit. You can argue it all day long. If you think you're going to attack the hoarded masses coming over the hill at 840 meters, good on you. You're wasting my time. You can go away with the pansies that don't like the way I talk. The truth of the matter is you're not going to be shooting anything probably outside of 200 meters unless you're deer hunting. And then use a different rifle. I don't know what to tell you. But to make AR-15 an effective weapon, you've got to be able to navigate through hallways, doorways, in and out of vehicles. That 20-inch barrel, turning that thing into 40 inches overall, it really is like carrying a telephone pole with you. The carbine and what's the ATF lunatics calling it now, the AR-15 pistol. Yes, the AR-15 pistol. Much more effective for what we do in life. It's easier to carry. It's much more maneuverable. It just makes more sense. Now, we're going to be getting into bullet fragmentation statistics in here in a little bit. And yes, I do know about that. So just calm down. Keep your panties, dry for a little bit more. I do know what I'm talking about when I talk about ballistic speed, the fragmentation, the critical speed for fragmentation and all this stuff. So I have a counter for that as well. I don't come to a gunfight unarmed. But listen to what we're talking about here, okay? So, let's just talk about it now before I forget. Called the fragmentation threshold. To understand why velocity matters so much, one must examine how traditional military 5.56 ammunition behaves after impact. Contrary to what Hollywood occasionally suggests, bullets do not simply strike a target and politely continue in a straight line while dramatic music plays. Instead, a projectile such as the M193 and the M855 often rely on a process known as yawning and fragmentation. Upon entering soft tissue, the bullet begins to rotate, destabilize, and experience enormous stresses along the structure. If traveled at sufficient velocity, these stresses cause the projectile to fragment into multiple pieces. The result is considerably more destructive than a simple narrow puncture wound. The behavior, however, comes with an important condition. The bullet must be moving fast enough. The general accepted fragmentation threshold for traditional military-style 5.56 ammunition is approximately 2,700 feet per second. Above this threshold, fragmentation is highly likely. Below it, the projectile increasingly behaves like an extremely fast metal knitting needle. While being struck by an extremely fast metal knitting needle remains deeply unpleasant, it is not the same mechanism that originally made the cartridge famous. This is where barrel length enters the discussion. A 20-inch rifle launches the bullet with enough velocity to remain above the fragmentation threshold for significantly greater distances. Depending on ammunition and environment conditions, fragmentation performance may remain consistent well beyond 150 yards. Now, did you notice that number? 150 yards. We're not talking 840 meters, because let's be honest, at 840 meters, it would probably, 5.56 round at 840 meters is probably going to bounce off a cardboard box. A shorter carbine starts with less velocity and therefore reaches the critical threshold much sooner. The result is a reduced distance window, which is traditionally military-style ammunition, and it does not perform exactly as intended. So let's examine that. Unless you're in, Bill Gates' house and the living room is 400 meters across, close quarters combat, your shorter barrel carbines are going to be fine. You're going to hit the threshold. And I'm reading this about the 2,700 feet per second. I've read a lot of articles that said 2,300 feet per second. So we can split it down the middle, or we can keep it there. I don't really care. You can keep it where you want it. My answer to all of this is specialty ammunition. Of course, naturally, modern ammunition designers noticed this limitation and responded the way engineers always respond to limitations, by attempting to engineer around them. Contemporary heavy match projectiles bonded with soft points and advanced defensive loads often expand or fragment at reliably lower velocities. This innovation substantially reduced the practical disadvantage faced by shorter barrels. Nevertheless, when discussing pure ballistic efficiency, the full-size rifle remains a measurable advantage. This fact occasionally causes heated debates online where individuals armed with chronographs, spreadsheets, and emotional investments attempt to convince one another that velocity either matters immensely or not at all. Reality, as usual, resides somewhere inconveniently in the middle. You can't go wrong with the 20-inch barrel as far as velocity. You can't go wrong with the 20-inch barrel as far as distance. Thanks to my brother from another mother, I have my dream upper receiver, and it is a 20-inch barrel. It's a long barrel. It's a heavy barrel, but it's going to accomplish what I want out of a 300 blackout. It's exactly what I wanted out of 300 blackout. It's the exact configuration I wanted for a 300 blackout. I did not want a short barrel for a 300 blackout because 300 blackout is a critical round. You need to have velocity for a 300 blackout to do what it's supposed to do. This is not an argument to have saying shorter barrels are adequate. I mean, it's still going to come out of the barrel. It's still going to hurt if it hits somebody. It's still going to kill people at close range. So we just probably lost YouTube right away right there because I used the K word. But the thing is it's going to, a 300 blackout is going to perform exceptionally well with the shorter barrel, but it's not going to have the effectiveness with a shorter barrel. That's the one where you really want to get the kinetic energy behind that bigger, heavier round. The 300 blackout can be shot extremely accurate at 200 meters, which is a great distance to be taking the top of somebody's head off. After 200 meters, I wouldn't pull the trigger. It's just too far away. You're wasting rounds. But 300 blackout, I would argue you want a longer barrel. For all you longer barrel fanatics out there, 2.23, 5.56 for what you're going to be using that for. It doesn't. I don't personally think it makes that much of a difference. Gas system dynamics, pressures, and mechanical longevity. While most shooters focus on velocity, trajectory, and terminal performance, the second battlefield exists entirely within the rifle itself. The battlefield consists of pressure curves, moving metal parts, expanding gases, and engineering decisions that determine whether a rifle cycles with graceful precision or behaves like it's perpetually late for an appointment. God, that's hard to say. The AR-15 operates using a direct impingement gas system, one of the most discussed, misunderstood, praised, criticized, and repeatedly explained mechanical systems in modern firearms. The concept is surprisingly straightforward. As the bullet travels down the barrel, a small portion of the expanding gas is diverted through a gas port and directed backward through the gas tube into the bolt carrier group. This gas drives the internal operating components, unlocking the bolt and cycling the action. It is an elegant system. It is also a system that becomes remarkably sensitive when engineers start shortening barrels. I have to take frequent breaks to drink water. My allergies are acting up and it's making me cough. I apologize. Dwell time, the most interesting phrase ever invented by mechanical engineers. Moving on. One of the most important concepts in the AR-15 operation is dwell time. No, it is not a term invented by accountants. Dwell time refers to a brief period between the bullet passing the gas port and the bullet exiting the muzzle. During this interval, pressure continues flowing through the gas system and powering the operating mechanism. Although measured in fractions of a second, this tiny window has enormous consequences. In traditional rifle-length systems, the gas port sits relatively far down the barrel. By the time the projectile reaches it, chamber's pressure has decreased substantially. The operating system receives a smoother, gentler flow of gas. Everything happens with remarkable civility. The bolt unlocks calmly, extraction occurs smoothly, components experience reduced stress, mechanical parts live long and productive lives. The rifle functions with the quiet confidence of a machine that knows exactly what it's doing. A traditional carbine length gas system tells a different story. Because the gas port sits much closer to the chamber, the system taps into gas while pressures remain significantly higher. The operating components receive a much more energetic impulse. The bolt carrier group accelerates rearward with enthusiasm. Extraction begins earlier. Moving parts experience greater stress. The entire mechanism behaves like someone drank 3 energy drinks and immediately started making life decisions. Now, again, I'm going to put my 2 cents in. My experience carrying an AR-15, M16, M16A2, whatever you want to call it, if you show it a picture of sand, there's a good chance it's going to jam. If it's exposed to sand, it will jam. That's why there's a forward assist to push the bolt home. That button on the side that looks like a little bullseye or a pedal or whatever you want to call it, you rack that, and once you put the slide home, you got to hit that a couple times. You know, without even checking if you're in a sandy environment or a dirty environment, you know to hit the forward assist a couple times just to make sure the bolt is seated properly. This is the nice thing to me about a shorter barrel, a carbine. It's going to rack that everything harder. Everything's going to move harder. It's going to knock sand out. It's going to clear the bolt carrier group moving area. The bolt carrier group has a much better chance of going forward. Yes, it's harder on the weapon, absolutely. However, the time you're using it and the time you need it to work, you want that crap to be out of the gun. You want the gun to work properly. You want all the sand out, all the dirt out, all the, I don't know, Hello Kitty stickers, whatever the hell you're putting in there. You want all that shit out of the chamber and the bolt carrier group movement area. The harder striking bolt, when it goes back and hits the recoil assembly, the buffer spring and the buffer harder, it's going to knock that stuff out of the gun, a lot of it out, and it makes the gun more effective in sandy or dirty environments. So I'm not opposed to the gun operating differently with a little bit more recoil and a little bit more, force in the gas tube and pushing the bolt carrier group back a little bit harder. Then there's the curious case of the overgas carbine. As carbines became increasingly popular, manufacturers often retained gas system dimensions were originally designed around shorter military barrels. When those same gas systems were paired with civilian legal 16-inch barrels, interesting phenomenons emerged. The rifles frequently became overgassed. This means the operating system receives more gas than strictly necessary to function. To be fair, overgassed rifles tend to run reliably. They also tend to cycle with mechanicals. They tend to cycle more like a sledgehammer than a regular rifle. I can't say that word. I'm not even going to try to say that word. It's easy to type. It's hard to pronounce. Excessive gas pressure drives the bolt carrier group rearward and elevates speeds. The bolt begins unlocking while chamber pressures remain relatively high, and the extractor must work harder to remove the spent casing. Boo-hoo, work harder. It simply accomplishes this task by treating the internal components with the urgency of Black Friday crowd entering a department store. Over time, the increased stress contributes to accelerated wear. Bolts may fatigue sooner, extractors work harder, buffer systems absorb greater impacts. None of these issues are catastrophic, but they represent cumulative mechanical costs associated with designs. That's why we carry spare parts, people. The civilized behavior of the rifle length system. The full-size rifle enjoys advantages that stem directly from its geometry. Its longer gas system allows pressure to decline naturally before cycling begins. The operating components move at a more controlled speed. The recoil impulse becomes smoother, parts endure less abuse, heat management improves. The anti-rifle operates with a degree of mechanical refinement that frequently surprises shooters accustomed to shorter carbines. This is one reason experienced shooters often describe a properly configured 20-inch rifle as feeling smooth. What they are actually experiencing is a pressure curve that resembles a carefully planned engineering solution rather than an ongoing argument between moving parts. The rifle is not necessarily more reliable. The carbine is not necessarily unreliable. The difference is more akin to comparing a luxury sedan to a sports car. Both accomplish the same task, but one approaches it with noticeably greater composure. Why the debate never ends. This brings us to one enduring truth of AR-15 ownership. The rifle length system is mechanically elegant. The carbine is mechanically practical. One optimizes smooth operation, the other optimizes compactness. As a result, enthusiasts often spend countless hours debating which compromise is superior, occasionally behaving as though engineers accidentally forgot to include a universal setting labeled perfect. Unfortunately, physics remains stubbornly committed to trade-offs. The smoother operating rifle is longer. The more compact rifle experiences greater stress. Neither configuration violates the laws of mechanics. Neither achieves perfection. Both simply prioritize different aspects of performance. The reality, while entirely reasonable, has unfortunately done very little to reduce the number of internet arguments. Recoil impulse and the human factors and ergonomics. Okay, let's try it again. Recoil, impulse, human factors, and ergonomics. While discussion about ballistics often dominate firearm conversations, shooters eventually encounter a less glamorous reality. At some point, an actual human being must interact with the rifle. Man, the coughing. I am so sorry. This introduces a variety of inconvenient factors such as comfort, handling, fatigue, spatial awareness, and the unfortunate limitations of the human body. As it turns out, physics does not stop influencing a rifle simply because of someone who is holding it. The myth of 5.56 recoil. One of the most persistent claims around AR-15s is that it has little or no recoil. The statement is technically inaccurate. The rifle absolutely produces recoil. The reason people say otherwise is because many have previously fired cartridges that appear to have been engineered specifically to settle personal disputes with collarbones. Compared to larger calibers, 5.56 produces remarkably mild recoil. However, not all AR-15 configurations feel the same. A full-size 20-inch rifle delivers what many shooters describe as smooth recoil impulse. The longer gas system, heavier front-end weight, and reduced operating pressures create a sensation that feels more like a controlled push than a sharp impact. The rifle moves rearward predictably. The muzzle rises very little. The sight picture remains stable. Everything feels composed. The experience is similar to riding a luxury sedan designed by engineers who spent years eliminating every possible source of discomfort. Carbines, particularly those okay, we're going to go like a few more lines and then I'm going to stop and I'll pick this up tomorrow. I got to get some sleep. Carbines, particularly those utilizing traditional carbine-length gas systems, offer different experiences. Their operating systems cycle more aggressively. The bolt carrier group moves faster. The buffer impacts the rear of the receiver extension with greater force. The resulting recoil impulse feels sharper and more abrupt. No, it's not painful. No, it's not excessive. But compared to the full-size rifle, it poses a subtle refinement of caffeine-fueled squirrel attempting to complete an obstacle course. The rifle remains entirely manageable. It simply feels more energetic about the process. All right, we're gonna stop it here. Like I said, I got to get some sleep. I am exhausted, but I wanted to get this out because I am sick to shit of people wanting me to talk about weapons. But I've got at least as much as we've already done just to get it into you gun nuts that we are going to go a lot more into this. But this is it for today. Y'all watch your six. Peace out. I'm going to get some rack time.